Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I still hear piano coming from somewhere, which must mean that it's just in the ether. So thank you, Tony, for sharing with us. It's been wonderful to have you opening each one of these sessions for us. My name is Antoinette, and I am one of the hosts of the Gaia Journey, and I have the great honor of letting us land here. So welcome to all who have been with us over the 14 weeks that we have been together. And welcome to those of you who may just be joining us today now. It is a great pleasure to be in this together. And I'll share a little bit about the journey. I know that many of us in Zoom right now are just saying hello and where you're from, and possibly in the YouTube comments as well. I am standing north of New York City, which was once territory of the Lenape. And I have been really sitting with each of you, each of us together. Melanie Goodchild reminded us that we are sitting in circle together. And so I invite us to land in that circle, in that space. And as you look into the Zoom room and the gallery view, just noticing the community that we have been sitting in, that circle that we have been sitting in. So for many of us, if you're in Zoom, there are a couple of hundred of us here in this one Zoom room, but as many of you know, we've been threading these Zoom rooms together. And there are hundreds and hundreds of us, thousands of us who've been participating in this journey, about 7,000 every inhale. So on the Fridays that we've been gathering, and many more who have been joining us in and out throughout the journey. I'll quickly share my screen to just invite us into to the journey and where we've been and land us in this space. We are here in the inhale. Many of you know we've been using the inhale and exhale, this collective breath, to be able to move through the journey, which started when we realized that COVID-19 was moving into this global pandemic experience. And it has been many weeks that we have experienced lockdown. We have experienced crisis after crisis. And we've also been kind of just moving through this process of Theory U, developed by Otto and the Presencing Institute, to kind of hold this process of transition and transformation, really moving into the world that we know is possible and we've always known is possible. But as we've been moving through this journey, many of you may remember that on March 27th, we actually came together with Vandana Shiva and Dana Cunningham and elders and leaders from Western Australia, Aboriginal community, and those are Noel Nanup, Richard Wally, and Carol Inns. And in that day, it was almost as if we started this journey together with exactly what unfolded over the last 14 weeks. With Vandana Shiva, we explored the food system, and many of our communities experienced a food crisis. So really looking at food shortage, where our food comes from, how we're going to get healthy food to our communities. And then we sat with Dana Cunningham, who invited us to look at structural violence and structural racism. And she looked at structural violence as a set of human agreements. And over the last weeks, we have been exploring that together throughout all of our guest faculty, but specifically with Angel Acosta, who joined us last week for a community conversation where we could look at systemic racism and see that together. So that process of staying with and deep resonance and moving with, it's been that 14-week journey, but it's also been the journey that we hold in each one of these sessions and that we'll hold with you again today. So I stand here in awe of all that we have been doing together and all of the people who have really been holding this. This is a snapshot of the global team and the many, many people who deserve much gratitude and thanks for our many thousands who have been connecting. There are this many holders, and it just takes quite a bit of energy and strength to hold the 13,000 people who have to this journey, and the close to 200 hubs, the 8 language tracks, the 70 plus countries. We are really here in this together. And with that, I would like to share it, the next piece over to Rachel.
Thank you, Antoinette. Welcome, everyone. My name is Rachel, and I sit in Rome, Italy. And I'm so excited to share with you today a glimpse into the community of people who have been holding. So it's just a small glimpse, because as Antoinette was saying, there are over 70 countries, and we couldn't find a way to represent everyone, but we asked ourselves and some of the people in the journey, what is Gaia for you? And we captured some responses, and we would like to share with you this short clip that's going to illustrate the variety, the diversity, and the generosity of those who have been taking part in this journey. And we captured some of the languages. There are many, many more, and we hope that we will continue together to walk this journey beyond Gaia with what has been started. So we will now send this little clip and show you the voices from the Gaia journey.
C'est un champ humain de connexion et d'espace d'écoute collective.
The Gaia journey has really expressed to me what's possible, to see all of us collaborating across the entire planet, across time zones and language barriers.
重新开启深度连接自己与他人与整个生态系统的旅程。
Aprender a mirar con nuevos ojos aquellas posibilidades infinitas que se abren compartiendo con todos en este gran viaje.
Die Gelegenheit, Menschen zusammenzubringen mit der Absicht, aus dieser Krise hinaus neue Möglichkeiten zu entdecken und wachsen zu lassen.
Gaia es un viaje de inmersión profunda en el no saber.
L'occasion de me relier à des compagnons généreux dans le monde.
Es un viaje colectivo de descubrimiento y creación.
Gaia es una fiesta full of consciousness.
一个人做的有限，但如果有机会，我们一群人可以去做一些事情，是可以让这个改变可以发生的。
Evolving, emerging, and a connected global community.
Una aventura de no saber, pero estar disponible.
It's about embracing diversity and submerge myself into the world's different cultures.
世界中の日本語話者たちが集まり、一つの目的に向かって動き出す場だと思います。
E lasciarsi sorprendere da quello che non potevamo immaginare, ma che riusciamo a fare insieme.
Y sobre todo darse cuenta de que no estamos solos.
É um lugar seguro, onde nós todos podemos nos alimentar.
Una visión global que dio a mi propósito de ayuda una intención más sólida.
私にとって本当の意味でのグローバルアクティベーションです。
Een mogelijkheid voor mensen om samen te komen en zich met zichzelf en met elkaar te verbinden.
C'est un voyage à plusieurs niveaux, global, collectif, dans les équipes, et aussi pour moi personnellement un instant de transformation intérieure profond.
Rachel, thank you so, so much. And just to thank you to all of the team who has been part of this journey and co-creating that, and to Rachel, who has been steadfastly holding this journey, and the language tracks and all of the people who have been wanting to come in. Rachel has just been consistently, committedly dedicated and there for everybody. Just really grateful to you, Rachel, and thank you for creating this slide and sharing this video, and for the social media pushes. I could keep going. But Rachel, do you have any final words about this video or anything else?
I would love to invite everyone else to share what the Gaia Journey has been for them using the hashtag Gaia Journey on social media or in the chat and everywhere you feel like expressing what Gaia Journey is for you. Thank you, Antoinette.
Thank you, Rachel. And another of the many who this journey would not be possible without, and who has really helped to frame and hold many focus groups and conversations with all of us throughout this experience, and really a key person in helping us to make sense of all of this, as Eva Pomeroy, who I pass it over to now.
Thanks, Antoinette, and thank you so much for that video and for all the language track holders. It actually connects really well to the research piece, which makes sense because we are all sort of experiencing this and making sense of it together. So the piece that I would like to bring in today is very much around the clarifying of intention as a theme. And we talked about it a little bit in the last inhale, but I think it's worth surfacing it again. And what I'd like to do is just try to mirror back to this whole, to the community, sort of what's happening across the community around clarifying intention. And so some of you have shared with us that this is a space that you're still sensing into, right? It's still, it's a place where you're still working. Others have shared that, that your intentions are starting to clarify. And one of the things that surfaced in several places that I think is worth sharing is the comment that people make that the intention that they're holding right now is quite different from the one that they were holding at the beginning of the journey. And there are a few different ways that that sort of plays out. So some of you have shared that you're moving into action, moving into or toward projects with unexpected stakeholders or in unexpected locations, or into action that's completely different, that you hadn't imagined it before the journey began. But then others are sharing that that shift in intention is more about a shift in scale. And I think the best illustration of that for me came from Joel in the focus groups, who shared that initially at the start of the journey, he really thought his action would be at the level of systemic change. But as he slowed down and really connected with what was important to him, he discovered that his sort of right next action was at a much more local level. And as he said, it's very local, it's at the level of my family. And so I guess the piece that I wanted to hold up to the community is that the action that we are stepping into is happening at all levels of scale. And certainly for me, the piece that's transformative is more about how we're sourcing that action. And so in the last survey, people commenting, I'm listening inside, I'm slowing down, I'm getting present, I'm trusting my intuition. And I think all of those comments we would frame as acting from that place of letting go and letting come, which in itself is a transformative action. So that's a piece about the content. One other piece to mention is that we will have a final survey that will be shared in the chat at the end of the session, where we're really going to be looking at impact, but also getting input for sort of moving forward. So if people do have a moment to share their comments with us, we really appreciate it. And that's it from me. And I think it goes back to you, Otto.
Thank you, Eva, and hello to everyone here from the Boston area. Thank you, Eva, for reminding us how real change actually happens. And I think one of the greatest teacher that we have is nature, right? And how does change start in nature? Very small, with a seed, right? And that's really what we want to try to focus on today, these seeds of the future that have been clarifying or crystallizing for us. It also, what you said, Eva, reminds me of the remarks in one of the opening sessions that we had from Dr. Noel, the Aboriginal Nyong'o elder, who shared with us the following. All we need to do is to have a piece of the path to the future. And that is ours. And we polish that and we hone that. And we place that in the pathway that we are building. And as we build that pathway, it changes us, the builders of that path. And it also shapes the destination that we are going to. So this session is really about landing that. Landing into our current moment. Landing into the current moment of each of us holding our piece of the path to the future. Something that we can polish and hone. Something we can place into the pathway that we are building together. So what is the piece that you are holding? What is the seed of the future that you are holding in your hand? Or maybe that you are holding in your heart, that you can cultivate going forward? We started the journey by looking at the three divides. And as Antoinette mentioned, kind of Vandana Shiva really talked to us about the ecological divide. And we leaned into that. Then Dana talked to us about the social divide, and we leaned into that. And we realized that the ecological divide is really arising from the disconnect between self and nature. And the social divide is arising from the disconnect between self and other. And then that to address them, there's a third divide, the spiritual divide, that arises from a disconnect between self and self that has to do with our capacity to connect with our deeper sources of knowing. And we realized that on a global scale today, looking at these three divides, we can say that collectively we create results that almost nobody wants. Collectively, we create results that almost nobody wants. And when we talked about reimagining and reshaping our civilization, what we really mean is reimagining and reshaping our ways of living and working together such that we can bridge the ecological and the social and the spiritual divide rather than deepening them. And we approached this question by using the method of awareness-based systems change that comes with the principles that you cannot understand a system unless you change it. You cannot change a system unless you transform consciousness. And you cannot transform consciousness unless you make the system see and sense itself. And then we learned from one of our speakers in the GAIA Portuguese track, the indigenous leader Ubirasi Patacho, that to do all this, we have to be the system. Today, we live in a moment, in a global moment where the ground is shifting and where we participate in the birth of a new global movement that has the capacity to not only profoundly change the face of this country, but to catalyze profound changes around the world. When in 1989, the Berlin Wall collapsed, we were in a similar moment. We saw the beginning of the end of the Cold War system. It was a wall that collapsed between two different social systems, capitalism and socialism. Today, a different type of wall is collapsing. It's not an outer wall, it's an inner wall. It's a wall that separates us from the system, from each other, and from ourselves. As this wall breaks down, we become aware of systemic or institutional racism that manifests in different forms of violence, which we discussed in our last Inhale a little bit, which is direct violence, structural violence, and attentional violence. Direct violence is the police brutality against African-American citizens. Structural violence is the shocking levels of inequality that we see in our societies, not only here in America, but around the world, in most countries. And attentional violence has to do with not seeing another in terms of their highest future possibility. So what has happened really over the past few weeks is a process of becoming aware of our blind spots, because the only way to address these three types of violence is to become aware of our blind spots. So for example, I, as a Euro-American white man, become aware of the privilege that I benefited from in accessing a lot of opportunities that are not available to many, many others that may have a lot more talent and a lot more gifts to share and to give. So in terms of my own blind spot, I noticed three different dimensions of that. The first one has to do with not seeing what's really going on. Not seeing what's really going on is really the issue of, you could say, the frozen mind. And, you know, has to do with our biases, but also with our ignorance. So an example there is my not knowing, the slave patrols really capturing runaway slaves being one of the origins or the precursors of the formal police force here in the United States. In other words, my not seeing concerns the direct continuity between slave patrols, lynching, and police brutality today against African-American citizens. A second blind spot is that you see something, I see something, but I'm not feeling it. So an example here is, I am aware of structural inequality, structural violence, appalling levels of inequality in our society. But do I really feel that? Is that really opening my heart, or do I feel a real distance to that? So othering, right, as a result of kind of relating to others in a way that is slightly cynical, that does not really kind of connect with what really is going on a deeper level. And the third blind spot that I shared last time is seeing something, even feeling it, but not acting on it. The issue of apathy, which is, you know, not the frozen mind, not the frozen heart, but this is kind of the issue of the frozen will, which, you know, can come in two versions, right? So one is fear and depression, right? So we are just, you know, getting frozen inside ourselves, or the opposite of that, fanaticism and destruction. So all of that. So what is it that enables the continuity of these three forms of violence, right? What is it that enables the continuity of this systemic racism and trauma? It is my, you know, as a white man, continued unawareness around these three blind spots. Because the only way to address these things is addressing it together. Zooming out a little bit, what do we see? We see that the three issues, right, that I described, the three blind spots, really are grounded in an architecture of separation that you see here, right? An architecture of separation that separates us from the world, right, not seeing, that separates us from each other, not feeling, that separates us from our true sources of transformative action, not acting. And to really address these core issues at their root requires a process where we develop, where we as a community, we as a society, kind of we as networks develop architectures of connections that allow us to connect with our capacity for unconditional witnessing, truly seeing what's going on, unconditional love, truly holding each other in this situation, and unconditional confidence in order to supporting unconditional courage and confidence in order to support each other and help each other to move forward. Which, if we do so, could allow us to collectively move into a process of reckoning, truly addressing and facing kind of our profound shadows of the past, our profound collective shadows of the past, reconciliation and reparation, which can give us the foundation to progress on a true process of healing and regenerating, rebuilding our society. The shadow that we face individually in our institutions, but also collectively as a community, is not a problem that we need to fix. The shadow, seeing our own shadow, is the source of transformation that allows us to step into a different world. It's our piece of the path to the future that we need to hold, that we need to own, that we need to polish and transform. So, what is your piece that you're holding? When you look into the mirror of that shadow in the context of your own life, in the context of your own organization or institution, in the context of your own country or culture, what do you see? Where is it that you're not truly seeing what's going on? Where is it, which is the frozen mind, where is it that you are not feeling what you see? The issue of the frozen heart. And where is it that you are not truly acting on what you see and what you feel? Connected to the issue of the frozen will.
Thank you, Otto, for taking us through that snapshot of where we've been and where we are. And I invite us all to settle into those three questions that Otto just asked us. Where is it that we're not truly seeing, not truly feeling, and not truly acting? So I'd like to invite us into a moment of stillness where we can sit with that experience and begin to incorporate that element of shadow or that element of pain in our own experience as a source for transformation, as a source for the growth that each of us individually needs and that we as a collective need. So, if you can get both feet flat on the ground, you feel a sense of uplift in the spine. You can lower your gaze. And with each breath, soften the boundary. Softening that inner wall. Perhaps allow whatever wall might be there to begin to melt. Otto described it as a frozen mind. So with a rooted sense of the feet to the ground, to this piece of earth, our piece of the path, and a sense of openness and expansiveness to the sky, inviting a sense of curiosity. Where is it that I might not be truly seeing? Where might I be stuck in my own view? And slowly turning the attention to the heart and softening the space around the heart. And sometimes as the heart cracks open or the space around the heart begins to soften, there is a deeper attunement to a feeling. And perhaps that feeling is pain or sadness. And in this moment, staying open to holding to whatever might be there. And knowing that word unconditional, it's just an acceptance of whatever feeling may arise. And with each breath, moving to that space just below the belly button that Martin Kalungu Banda brought us in. That space just below the belly button, softening that space between self and anything beyond that. Just finding a deep connection. If you could ask that shadow piece, if you could ask that blind spot, what it is calling from us now. What is this moment calling for us to act on now? Just noticing what arises for you here. As you tune back into your space and what is around you, the screen, each other, you can take a pen and paper and just jot down if anything came up for you. Jotting down maybe something you're just reckoning with right now. Maybe something that came up in your need to act. Maybe there's something that now you have this small act, that seed that's already been planted. Just writing anything that may be coming up for you down, and we will move into breakouts to be able to connect with each other and just share what came up. And we will take about 15 minutes in our breakouts and have some time to connect. And the invitation is to share your name and where you're coming from, and recognizing that this may be brand new people that you're with. And when you connect with them, you may want to just invite curiosity and that practice of unconditional holding, seeing, and supporting. So we'll give you a moment to just jot anything down before we turn you into breakout. Hopefully you have something, and if not, that's okay too. Whatever is with you will emerge in your time together. So enjoy your time together, and we'll see you back here in just about 15 minutes. For those of you who are not in a room, that is perfectly wonderful, and just hope that you can take some time to journal and notice what's coming up for you. And Tony has agreed to play some music for us, so enjoy your time in your current experience. We'll be back with everyone in about 10 minutes. Thank you, Tony. That was a very powerful reflection moment for those of us who were here in the room. And for those of us who are just coming back, we're waiting for the rooms to repopulate from our breakout time together. I hope you all had a wonderful breakout. And I know they are never long enough. So if you'd like to stay in touch with your breakout members, you can feel free to find each other in the Zoom chat and on the GaiaJourney.org site. Wonderful. So we'd love to hear from anyone who would like to share, and as many as we can in a short period of time, just any essence of what came up, or perhaps as you begin this process of becoming aware of the blind spots and beginning to integrate, just anything that may be showing up for you. So what you can do in order to do that is type directly into the chat and or raise your virtual hand by clicking on the participants button at the bottom of your screen if you're using the Zoom on a computer. And if you're on YouTube, you can share via the comments, and we will try to bring a few of those in as well. So I believe we have Anastasia in channel 1. Here we go. If you can unmute yourself, Anastasia, then you're not able to. 1 second.
Yeah, it worked. Thanks. I'll be just very fast. I want to thank my room for the conversation, because it finished for me absolutely different way than it started. Because when it started, I had not really idea how to share, and then HELIO, the person from our room, just started it from such a sincerity, from this heart, that it just set the tone of the conversation. And it's a really good reminder not to hold yourself, and if you want to speak from your heart, speak, because it can really open other people around you up. So thank you for that.
Beautiful, Anastasia. Thank you, and to that, the sincerity of the heart. You know, it's just an incredibly powerful sentiment. Moving to Mia in channel 2.
Yes, I'm trying to, yes, here I am. Can you hear me? No.
Yes, I can hear you, Mia.
Yes, okay. Thank you. It was a wonderful group, and we shared about beautiful things people were doing, incredible, making a film, a paper on leadership with the heart and what should happen. And it was, we were very active on sharing what we were and what we were doing and where we were. And at the end, I was so sad that we didn't share about what came up when you led us through this moment, Antoinette. And in 3 minutes, we just immediately, all of us replied what had come from the belly. And it was so moving. And I'm still moved by that. And thank you to you three, and see you. Hope to see your film and read your paper. That's it.
Thank you so much, Mia. So beautiful. We're going to move to Sapana next, who's in Zoom room 3.
Hi, this is Sapna, and I wanted to thank
Otto, Antoinette, the entire team, in fact. Oops, my video just went off. For creating this incredible space where we can have these honest and heartfelt discussions. I am missing this kind of container in other spaces that I enter, and I just wanted to express such gratitude for that, because we really need to be able to speak from the heart to each other if we're going to move forward, and really speak across and connect across all the differences that we have, because that's what we need as a world right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Sapna. And I have a couple from YouTube as well. Jose Bucci Casaril just became aware that despite all the readings, the news, the history of devastation, I still take part in the destruction of the planet. I don't change my habits. I'm stuck. And another from Daniela Acosta. What came up for me was finding my own authentic voice to be able to get out of my frozen will. So thank you all for sharing, and please do continue to share in the chats here, and also with each other as a whole, with the hashtag GAIA Journey in our social media spaces, because that is the place where we can share through all the channels and all of the sessions that we've been holding together. So this is, it's incredibly powerful to begin looking at our blind spots and holding the places where we can use that as a source for transformation rather than putting it into a box and something that we just don't want to see. So I would like to invite in two voices who have been present in our GAIA journey, and who I met through the Ecosystem Leadership Program in the Presencing Institute, Willie Azarkoya and Nora Wilhelm, who have been both, Willie is based in Mexico and Nora is based in Switzerland, and have both been taking part in the journey, but also kind of holders in their own ways of the journey as well, and in their own places and spaces. So we'll turn it over to Willie first, but I just would like to say before we do that, Willie has been starting an initiative called Querétaro es Uno. And, you know, I've just been blown away by how the two of them have actually connected with each other in the GAIA journey, and each initiative that they have been part of and starting and pushing forward. And Nora is the co-founder and catalyst of Colaboratio Helvetica. So we will hear from both of them some living examples of what this moving into action can really look like. So over to Willie.
Thank you, Antoinette, and thank you to everybody that is holding this space. I'm going to share a little bit of the story of Querétaro es Uno, which actually began here on March 27th in the first Inhale session of GAIA. And well, for me, it was like, I remember that I came to that very first session with a lot of fear, because in Mexico, exactly like a week before, we have begun the lockdown of COVID-19. And I have been with another group of citizens and people here in Querétaro, holding a space for like 7 or 8 months, trying to find inspiration and trying to find our inner voice about how could we improve the conditions of the place we were living here in Querétaro, and trying to stop this unintended consequence that we were looking at. But we have been on a slowly monthly meetings, and we haven't prototyped anything already. But on that first session, something happened, because as I told you, I came like with a lot of fear to it, but the energy was amazing on that very first session, and I started like to really feel the stepping into the field of possibility. And I remember the breakout rooms and how we were discussing about how we should be stepping away from, I mean, from this frozen feeling of I can do anything into stepping into the field of possibility. And something really interesting happened, because as there was a moment on this first session on March 27, when I look at the chat at the chat on here on Zoom, and Nora Wilhelm, which I knew from the ELP program, but I didn't realize that it was her. It was she that wrote this. She wrote, an important topic to me seems micro solidarity, and for me that was like an opening of something. I can't tell you exactly, but I felt that really deep inside of my body, that there was something really strong in that concept. And maybe I just can explain it like, there's a quote from Bert Hellinger. He says that truth is like a light that comes in a lightning in a storm. It comes for a moment, that it illuminates everything, and then it goes away. And you need to be very present to feel that, and to be able to connect with that truth. And I think that's what happened with me with this topic of micro solidarity. And then things start working out. We began a conversation with these colleagues, and this movement, Querétaro's Uno, began to take form. We invited other people and other organizations here in our city that were already doing something to take care on the situation of other people that were on a less privileged situation than us. And this movement just popped up and began to attract people from other spaces that we didn't know them very well and their initiatives, but we start to build this ecosystem. And as the results of last week, we were able to help a lot of people. More than 450 tons of meals have been prepared, and food packages have been delivered to families. And we also have been able to gather some medical supplies to our doctors that were running off medical supplies to help our people. But I mean, all these facts and figures for me are not the most important thing, because at the end, I think that the inner change in everybody who stepped forward and do something for something else. And for me, that is the big story here in Querétaro's Uno, because there's 100 of volunteers that just step into the field of possibility. And I think that for me, one of the important lessons is that we are on an unprecedented moment where the whole world is living through a shared experience. But it emphasizes our fundamental interconnectedness, and it presents for each of us an opportunity to act on this fact and to take responsibility for the whole. And I think that the micro change that I felt in that first session and through this whole journey, and I'm sure that I'm speaking for the hundreds and hundreds of people that are now working in Querétaro's Uno and that have donated money, time, energy, a lot of things. I mean, their time, they feel the same. We step forward into taking the responsibility of the whole, and we see ourselves as belonging to this community, and the responsibility of changing the conditions for the future. So we're still in that journey, and we are trying to work from the present. We are trying to operate not from a fragmentary thought, but trying to embrace the wholeness. And I think in 10 weeks it's a lot, and I feel very happy to be part of GAIA, because this is where everything started. And everyone who is holding this space, all the participants, everything that is written on the chat rooms, for me has been a lot of lightnings of truth that have helped this group to try to do something for this emerging situation.
Thank you so much, Willie. I love how in the Spanish track of GAIA, you use the word chispas, and the sparks, what you just said, the little lightning pieces throughout the chat, and just that little story of that micro solidarity moment, and what's really developed from these little sparks that we feel from each other and feel within. So thank you so much for sharing that story. And I will turn it over to Nora, who will share what's been happening in her part of the world.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Wow, William. Yeah, I heard the story before, but every time I'm so touched to just see how one spark, one chispa can offset another, and we can all resonate together. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. So as Antoinette announced, my name is Nora Wilhelm. I'm from Switzerland, and I'm the co-founder and catalyst of an organization, initiative, community called Collaboratie Helvetica. And what we aim to do is catalyze the societal renewal of Switzerland. So taking responsibility for our privilege, our place in the world, and our carbon footprint, and so on and so forth, and really catalyze the change on a systemic level here. So at the onset of the crisis, the Collaboratie Helvetica team came together, and we sat with, okay, what is ours to do now? What is the response that we can bring, that we feel called to bring? There was, of course, an internal dimension. How do we react as a system? So do we close up? Do we become fearful? Or can we stay from a place of solidarity, of care with each other, including employees who have children and so on, all the different realities as schools were being closed? And then there was the external reaction or response. And our sense was that we were witnessing, observing a lot of crisis management and very quick reactions, which of course is needed in a global pandemic, when every minute you wait to do certain things may risk more lives, right? That is one truth. And the other thing that felt true to us is that it's also really a moment to look at which systems are breaking down and why, and which systems are being shown as not actually, like Otto says, creating the results that most of us would want. So both what is this crisis showing us in terms of inequalities and structural violence that is being made worse or made more visible through the crisis, and also new openings, new opportunities, like Willie's beautiful story. And there we felt that it was our contribution to support that reflection. And of course, it's very aligned with the spark that was in GAIA. And as I was honored to be in the global team and co-hosting the Francophone track at the very beginning, I just saw how much energy there were. So we decided to just begin by hosting exhales for the Swiss ecosystem and kind of go from there. And this is how an initiative that we now call Nova Helvetia, which is Latin for the new Switzerland, was born. And what it is that it's infrastructure and an additional process that is anchored within GAIA, but goes beyond it, to support thematic cohorts to explore the topics that they care about. So we have 8: renewing education, gender equity, sustainable cities and neighborhoods, regenerative economy, climate action, future of democracy, how to fund societal change, and storytelling for the future. Yes, and now you can see the beautiful illustration that Jean-Baptiste from the GAIA Francophone track was so kind to make for us. And the invitation was for these topical groups to explore and reflect on their topics on the level of the open mind, the open heart, and the open will. So what this meant for us is to first look at your topic. So take education from which facts and data points are important to notice, what is happening in the topic, what with hundreds of thousands of children, for example, all of a sudden homeschooled in Switzerland, and universities placing their courses online. So what does that mean? What is happening? And then on the heart level, what are the stories? What are the emotional realities underneath those data points? So it's one thing to say that this many percentage of our society go hungry, or that domestic violence is increasing by this much, or that certain parts of the population are affected disproportionately by the crisis. And it's another to really listen to those voices, to really invite them into the room, and to really listen to particularly the margin and the voices that are typically excluded. And then on the level of the open will, each cohort, each group was invited to ask themselves, what is this teaching me about myself? So where am I embodying that which I want to see, or the paradigms that I'm now seeing are potentially problematic? And what are the seeds of the future that we begin to see? So not seeds that maybe need to be created, but are actually already there. They just need to be acknowledged as such and witnessed. All of this is flowing into reflection papers, so short publications that are aimed at distillating or crystallizing the insights from this journey. And the journey will culminate for Switzerland with the Swiss Forum. So we're organizing a one-day event that we call the Swiss Forum on the 28th of June, just before the Global Forum. And the aim is to cross-pollinize and explore the shared root causes. And maybe we can see a picture of what this would have looked like had we been able to meet in person. Sadly, we won't. There's a nice picture that maybe can be shown now. But if not, I'll just continue. And yeah, there we go. So this would have been us outside of Corona times. And after that, the reflection papers will be finalized, and we already have interest from the media, from politicians, from the federal government and administration to actually receive those papers and reflect together and continue the conversation. And I can't speak really for what's in those papers and what the insights are, because that is still to come. I also can't speak of all the prototypes that will come out of this, because that phase is also still to come. But what I can share is just the story of trusting an instinct, trusting this spark and just going with it. Because when we started, we had no idea how and even if we would be able to fund this. And not only have we been able to receive some funding, but even funding can now be made available for the prototypes that come out of it. So as one example. Something else that really touched me are the signs of solidarity across the different groups and within the groups. So just to give one example, in one group, two people that probably would never have met in this context met, and a graduate from university told that he lost his job due to the crisis. And the senior researcher in the environmental sector in Switzerland was also part of that group, and just spontaneously offered to support him financially to be a part of this journey, and then eventually donated to the whole project. So just these little sparks of solidarity and of amazing connections and synchronicity unfolding. And lastly, it's really been also a story of turning the camera back around and trying to work together to be together in a different way. So even, for example, now, how will we allocate the funding to the prototypes? So instead of having the power, having the money, and then trying to select and decide which are the best prototypes, which is how the system currently works, we will just allow anyone to apply and then put the money in the hands of all of the people who applied. And then we basically allocate ourselves to which projects we think are worth being supported. So I just want to end by saying a huge, huge, huge thank you to everybody, to the GAIA Global team, all the different teams that have been hosting the different tracks, so many local teams that have been doing so many things like Collaborazione Helvetica. I'm sure there are so many more. And I just want to leave with one insight. So kind of the courage that it took all of us to really go on this journey, knowingly into the unknown, admitting that we don't know. I think that's one of the most scary things to do. And a phrase that emerged in the Ecosystem Leadership Program, which is where Antoinette, Willy, and all of us met, is that we are a global forest with local roots. We are a global movement for civilizational renewal. And I stand here today in complete reverence of what happens, of what the power that is unlocked when we act out of that awareness. We are a global forest with local roots. Thank you.
Thank you for that reminder, Nora, and for the beautiful, incredible work that you both have been doing to do that internal excavation, the internal deep work with yourself and with your communities. And what I find incredibly touching is also the fact that while we've been in these lockdowns and actually our international borders, many of them have been closed, that we have seen so much cross-pollination, as you both shared, So thank you both. And we will make sure that these initiatives we can get more information in the GaiaJourney.org site so that we can keep learning from each other and getting involved in our places. And I absolutely love this global forest, local roots, and going back to what Otto shared earlier. It's a global forest with local roots and sometimes just one little seed that is planted. So what we'd like to do is invite you to journal. And oftentimes, we've done this many, many times throughout our journey together, but we get all of this information in the mind. You know, we take all of this in, and then we need to allow it to kind of land and move into the body. We've done a lot of embodiment work but one of the simplest practices is to use the work of the hands. So if you can find a pen and a paper, if you haven't already, you can just put the pen to paper and just notice. You may have an intention that you had coming into this space. You may have had an intention as we moved within the journey together. But based on what we just heard from Willie and from Nora, and from the little sparks that have been in our chats and that little spark that lives within each of us, what is it that you're sitting with as the intention now? And as Nora asked in the early stage of her journey, what is ours to do now? So I give you those two questions as you settle into your local roots in that space of seedling within yourself. What is ours to do now? What intention is emerging for you? What has become clear for you now? So perhaps something has begun to land for you. And perhaps this is just opening the door for a practice that will continue evolving. I know that each week in our sessions, throughout the days, something new pops up, something that I'm reckoning with or needing to reconcile, or I didn't even realize this was here. So that may continue to happen. That is part of the journey. What we'd like to do is invite everyone to share anything that may have come up, just what is resonating for you from this practice in the chat. So if you can type in directly and into the chat, and then we can read a few out before we turn to Olaf and see what came up. And we'll have all of our hosts help us get dots of all of the little sparks that are coming in the chat. So a few of us will read out from each channel and from YouTube as well. Okay. Do something, even if it seems ridiculously small. Take baby steps, but keep going. Continue mindfulness practice to get in contact with our deeper truth and act on it.
Big, vast, and micro compassion. Acting from the collective heart to water the seed now. To trust one another and ourselves to take action. To continue working with my local groups.
Yeah. Yes, just a sec. Being part of the global forest gives heart. It will be very difficult in the United States, but we must move forth. As one song says, put one foot in front of the other one and lead with the move. Voices with the earth, embodying that communion. As we find our seeds, let's us garden together.
And just a couple more here. The wall is crumbling inside me to move from the limited to the unlimited, seeding spaces for heart-to-heart conversations and emergent research as a way to illuminate the sparks for the way forward. From YouTube, connecting locally across different perspectives and priorities, our many challenges are not separate. Our next steps need to work for all. In the instinct that brought us together, keep on creating safe spaces for personal, social transformation. And the comments in the chats are incredible. So thank you for sharing what is moving in us now. I'd like to turn it to Olaf for us to have our visual practice with him. Olaf, what has been coming up for you? Wow.
Okay, now it's working. A lot, as you see. So I just want to probably point out one thing, which was just for me astonishing. I had some kind of something like this here, but it was very big. And then at a certain point, I wrote truly seeing, but I did not take care of it. And then I started to make this dusty kind of thing. And when I looked at truly seeing, I thought, well, my feeling would be to make really sharp lines to that's for me like truly seeing. And then I got annoyed by that. And then I suddenly thought, well, probably just for myself, this is truly seeing, so that you actually see the mist and not the sharp. So that was something that came up while doing. That's all.
Thank you, Olaf. So the invitation is to make your screen a full screen so you can be with this image as fully and completely as possible. And just to sit with this image that Olaf has been generating from our time together. And using the prompts I see, I sense, and I feel. Just noticing what is coming up for you. And then you can type directly into the chat. I see, I sense, I feel. Just anything that's been coming up for you in these few moments as we stay with this image.
I see the shadow. I see the shadow is the source. I see a circle with an opening. I see the current moment bleeding, and I feel hope connecting with the one blood that we are. I see a huge challenge.
I feel curious about what my shadow can teach me. I feel the tenderness of being held in a Gaia space. This is a powerful journey we are on together. I sense trusting the spark to be a signpost to the right way. I feel energy of love.
I see change, I sense pause. The confidence is burning to make way for the phoenix flight. I feel our shadow pushes us to shine and to be free. I sense we can connect by acknowledging we are united by our ability to bleed.
I see a winding path that is made by walking on it with no fear of the dark. Thank you all for sharing with us. Thank you everyone for sitting together in this. And before we close out, I just wonder, Otto, if you have anything that you'd like to share before we do our final close.
Maybe just one thing, an enormous gratitude to everyone bringing your full self into this. We are at the end. We know that the end is really the beginning of all of this. And the beginning is holding that piece of the path to the future and cultivating it. And that's the seed. And that's our own responsibility, so that we, by seeing the shadow, we develop the capacity to step into a new world and to enact and shape a new world. The global forest with the local roots. And maybe the only, in terms of the end is the beginning. So we will be sharing with you Social Solidarity Circle 4.0 that will help you to continue this process together and in the context of your community before we resume.
Thank you, Otto. And your description of the ending being a beginning reminded me that we called this session an arrival. And I feel that in many ways that we are arriving at a station. We've been on this kind of Gaia journey train together, and we are now just arriving at one of the station stops. And you know, we may get off in our own places and our own communities, and do the work. You know, now is the time that we will go and tend the soil and really do what needs to be done in our communities, as so beautifully exemplified here by Willie and Nora today. And then in the fall, we'll get back on the train together in some way, shape, or form, and in probably many ways throughout this time together, depending on where you are in the world. That season may be different. But there are a few things that we'll do in the meantime. One is that we will have the Global Forum on July 10th and 11th, and we'll have a pre-session on the 9th. To accommodate time zones. And right now, our hosts are putting in a survey, a link to the survey that will help us, particularly Eva, but all of us really, you know, not just the global hosting team, really all of us to sense make what is ours to do together. Because in this moment, we, you know, we are all actually being called forth. You know, now that we've been on this journey together, it is actually each and every one of us who is holding the key to the path, you know, is holding that little piece of the path and tending to it. So it is now time for each of us to step forward and to do the real work. It is up to us to move all of this forward, what we know is possible, what we've known is possible. And remember that we were made for these times. We were born for this moment, as we shared in that early stage journey. We could feel it, we could sense it, and now we know. We have all of this within us to tend to it, to reckon and reconcile, and to repair and to move forward. So thank you all for joining us. You can feel free to stay. We have the next piece of our closing or our arrival happening in 20 minutes. You can find the essentials and all the talks and highlights on GaiaJourney.org. You can also follow at #GaiaJourney. I would love to see the continued conversation there. It's so fun to see what's been coming up. And we will see you again. We will see you again quite soon, and look forward to our continued conversation together. We can all unmute and say goodbye. And for those of you who are staying, we'll see you in just 20 minutes to continue about institutional, looking at shadow and institutional movement building. So thank you all. And
thank you so much. Thank you.
Ciao.
Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Very much.
Gracias. Gracias.
Gracias. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
So much.